project management is about applying knowledge, skills, tools and technique to project management activities so we can effectively manage projects. We apply knowledge and skills using project management processes. So the PMBOK consists of 47 processes. So let's look at processes in this lesson. A process can be defined as a set of interrelated activities, maybe having some decision points inside, defined interrelated activities which produces some defined output. In order to produce this output, every process also takes set of input. As a project manager, your assignment begins with selecting the right amount of processes for your project. So you have defined set of processes coming from your organization and repository, and you need to put a filter to identify which all processes out of these are relevant for your project. This activity is also called tailoring. So you put a tailoring and identify what all processes are applicable for your project. You may also decide a rigor for a given process. For example, your organization may have a stringent rigor for a given process, but looking at your project requirement, that stringent rigor may not be needed for that particular given process. So you identify which all and what rigor you need those processes. Now these processes can be further categorized in two categories. One is project processes and another is product processes. Now project processes are the one which are defined in PMBOK. All 47 processes of PMBOK are project processes. They constitute good practice. So it's not necessary that you can work a successful project just by using all these 47 processes. You may need to put more process, or you may need to remove some of the process given in this 47 process book. But it constitutes that in a normal environment, these processes helps in managing project well. They are applicable to across industry. Means if you are executing project in a civil industry or if you are executing a project in a healthcare industry, for both the industries, these project management processes would be relevant, because project management processes helps us in executing project well. Look at the second set, product processes. So product processes are not defined in PMBOK. They are industry specific. Means the healthcare processes would be very different from civil processes. They are not useless. They are very necessary element of project management. So as a project manager, you need to have good understanding and control on product processes. So necessary for successful project management. So as a project manager, you need to look a combination of these two type of processes in order to deliver project. But as a PMP aspirant, you would be studying about project processes in a PMBOK guide at length. Now these processes, now going forward, we talk about project processes only because they are applicable to across industry, and as a generic project manager, we need to focus on these processes as per PMBOK guide is mentioning them. Now these project processes can be categorized further in 5 groups. They are initiating, planning, executing, monitoring and controlling, and closing. These are the 5 categories of processes. Now sometimes we feel that they look like something we will be doing in serial. Like we do an initiate, plan, execute, monitor and control, and then we close the project. This is not right. So the processes are not equivalent to life cycle. They are process groups, and interaction of these processes will produce the output. Life cycle defines the beginning and ending of a project, not the process groups. In general, project starts with the initiating process. We have activities related to initiation process, and then we do a planning activity throughout the project, and along with the planning we have a continuous execution. So we keep doing planning, and then we keep doing the work, and at the end we close the project. So there will be a processes. Initially we will be doing many initiating process as execution, then we will be doing planning and execution process execution, and monitoring and control will remain active throughout the project life cycle, because till the time from the beginning till end, monitoring and control process remains active to control our initiating, planning, executing activities. Now this is, if you are following a typical or a predictive life cycle, then we can also visualize how our level of efforts would be varying throughout the life cycle and mapping back to the process groups. So if I am using a predictive life cycle, and this is my, say, start till end timeline, initially I would be doing initiating activity mode. So in the initial stage of the project, the processes falling under category initiating would be more consuming efforts. People would be more involved in those processes. And initially also we would be doing good amount of planning. And as we reach, say, 75 or 80% of our project timelines, our planning activities will start going down. So our effort in a planning activity will start reducing as we move further in our project life cycle. The execution, initially it is low, but it keeps increasing, and by mid of the project, execution would be at higher rigor, and till the end it will start going down. So initially less amount of execution, process execution, but once we reach, say, nearby 40 or 50% of our project duration or 30% of our project duration, it will start peaking up. And monitoring and control, since it remains involved throughout the project, it will start from the beginning, and it is like a total proportion of total rigor on a project. So if you are spending, say, 100 hours in a project, irrespective of any process group, you may be spending, say, X percentage, say 10 hours in a monitoring and control. So your monitoring and control activities usually remain a function of your total rigor or total time investment in a given project. And at the end, you would be involved in a closing activity. So your closing process will be active using during the end phase of your project life cycle. But let us take an example of iterative or adaptive. So this was an example for a predictive type of life cycle and the interaction of the life cycle with the process groups. If we have an iterative life cycle, this distribution will be isolated, will get divided in iterations. So every iteration will have a grouping, something like this. For example, like if I have iteration 1, initially in an iteration I will have an initiating activities, then I may have a planning activities here, I may be doing, I may have a planning activities here, then execution will take control here, and then at the end we have a closing activity, we may restart the planning activity for our next iteration. So the group of like this may get focused in a one iteration, and we repeat this from iteration to iteration. The point what I am trying to make it clear here is that there is a relationship between a life cycle and the amount of effort we spend in various process groups. If we have a predictive life cycle, the process group investment will be something like this. If we have an adaptive or an iterative life cycle, the process group distribution of effort would be something like this.